Bob, are you ready for this episode?
Again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
Bob says we can start. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Safari Pedal Show. I'm your host, Abby. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Safari Podcast Do Crazy Thing Wild bandwagon. It's great to have you. I will say that before I became a producer and got into the whole technical side of audio, I started my journey in music off as a guitarist. Originally, I majored in music in high school and did the whole guitarist thing. And why am I saying this? It was then, in my youth, when I was a guitarist strictly back then, I fell in love with an amazing, wonderful thing called guitar pedals. I love pedals. And I also work at Safari Pedals. So you see how the pedal love, everything just came together and is an amazing pedal. I just live a great pedal life, you can say. The reason I'm saying all this is because our very special and incredible guest today is going to be Sarah, the founder of KinKin Audio. She makes, I won't even say makes, she crafts handmade, one-of-a-kind, really special looking and sounding pedals, and she's going to be on the show today. We're going to be diving into what inspired her to start KinKin Audio, what inspires the look and the sound of her really unique pedals and her whole journey behind that, and also how running a pedal company has been. She's the first pedal company gal on the show, and I'm just really pumped and really excited to learn more. I'm just a KinKin Audio super fan, and I feel like that is all I have to say in the intro. So guys, please give a very warm Safari welcome to Sarah, the founder of KinKin Audio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm like a mega fan. I told you before, but I'm going to say it again so it's on so everybody knows.
Well, it means a lot. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast. Before we dive in to KinKin Audio and everything, let's start with who you are and what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so my name is Sarah. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I'm a songwriter by trade. I work a lot in the sync industry, so music for TV, advertising, a little bit of film. This last couple of years, I've gotten really into building my own hardware and just started making pedals this year. I had all these visions, and now I make pedals, so I guess that's my identity now.
I am a pedal.
I am a pedal. I'm becoming a pedal.
Slowly.
A multi-effect pedal.
A multi-effect pedal. Oh my god, that's amazing. First of all, so cool that you did. I didn't know that you were in sync.
Yes, yeah, that's been my main thing since I was like 18. I got really into the sync world at an early age and just kind of rode that all the way to where we are now.
Wait, so how did you get into sync? Like, what was that?
It's kind of a funny story. I started writing songs at a pretty young age. About 14 was when I started really identifying as a songwriter and consistently writing songs and learning instruments of all kinds. And I just had this vague idea. I was like, I would just love to write music for a movie. I didn't know that was a job. I didn't know that was really something you could do. So as soon as I found out that was a thing, I was set my entire focus on making that happen. So, but this was back in the day when Craigslist was huge for all kinds of gigs. And I found this opportunity to write music for a film on there, like an indie feature film. And I, of course, sent my little EP that I had just recorded, my very first EP. It was super rough. And I sent it over to them, and they got back to me, and they were like, hey, we absolutely love your sound. Will you write some songs for our film? We'll pay you. We'll pay to have you record in this really nice studio. We'll give you the masters to the songs. And I didn't know at the time how lucky that was. Oh my God, they didn't try and take advantage of me at all. I got so lucky. So I wrote about 4 songs for the film, I think, in the end, and recorded them and got the masters. So the film did pretty well, I think, in the indie film circuit. I don't know whatever happened to it. It might be on a streaming platform at this point, but this was 10 years ago now. Wow, time flies. Anyway, and so I took those masters and I was like, oh cool, I have a reel now. I've been in a film, I'm now legit. And so then I just started networking. Basically, I reached out to any composer or writer that I could find that worked for sync companies or publishers, and I just was like, hey, this is me, this is my sound, this is something I've done. And that led to some really cool collaborations that then I just kind of leapfrogged from one collaboration to the next, which then introduced me to a lot of publishers, sync companies, which led to some terrible deals. I'm not gonna lie, I just learned the hard way of what what to do, what not to do, who to work with, who to avoid, kind of thing. And yeah, and it just kind of it led to writing kind of custom work for ads sometimes, doing demo vocals for other people. Just anything I can, I started recording my own stuff at home during the pandemic. I finally was able to invest in like a nice mic and an interface and kind of learned Logic and just the basics. And that really was enough to kind of empower me to keep going through the pandemic. So
Wow.
yeah, that was basically the story in a nutshell.
That's incredible, and that's so cool. I haven't really spoken to anyone that's been in that space. So it's so interesting to hear like a whole other side of the music industry that's not necessarily records for records.
Yeah, it's a way different world, actually. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's a little bit soul-sucking sometimes because, you write it. Like, I'm the kind of writer that I write very personal, very, like I process the world through songwriting. And I apply that same process to any commercial things that I write, which it's like a double-edged sword. It's great because it licenses well, because people want real music. But the other side of that is that oftentimes you get told like, oh, these lyrics are not happy enough. They're not positive enough. They're like, you have to change maybe some really important lyrics to kind of match this very fake aesthetic, which can hurt a little bit. You get kind of numbed to it, which honestly, this is a different podcast entirely about like the songwriting process and how it can get so staunched by this like commercial voice that comes in sometimes. It's like, no, you got to change that tense to, it's positive present tense only, moving forward, nothing in the past. Past is sad, unless that's like the brief. Anyway, so it is a very different world. Yeah.
Now I'm kind of inspired to really go down the rabbit hole of like diving into like what that is.
Yeah, we can.
Hell yeah. Amazing. So I'm super curious, like, how building hardware and pedals came into the picture from the sync world. Like, let's dive in.
So there is like a bit of a natural progression, I think, that happened. Well, one thing to note is that I have a very technical brain, which I wasn't really aware of, or it's not something that I was never told like, oh, you've got a very technical mind. You have the ability to comprehend, I don't know, like more than I ever thought I could. I just thought I was just a little songwriter, like playing my little folky songs, like I didn't really believe in myself in certain ways. I've always loved puzzles, but like that to me was just like puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, like they were very inconsequential. Anyway, so I was writing songs. The pandemic happened. I had just moved to LA. I was kind of doing freelance vocals, any kind of writing I could do, but I was not making ends meet. Like I was not playing any shows. It was very turbulent times. And I was really bored, to be honest. I was like, okay, songwriting is great, but I was just like so overwhelmed with the pandemic, the early days where it was like everyone was locked inside. Nobody knew the timeline or what was happening. I was about to release my first record on a record label in Portland, and it was going to debut on NPR, and I was like, great, this is going to be great for the record. But then the pandemic happened literally that month, the lockdown started that month. So I was like, do I even want to release the record? Luckily, the record label was like, yeah, like let's still release it because we like think this will really help. Like people want music in this time. We don't want to stop putting out music. And so we put it out, but it meant I didn't get to tour it at all. I really lost touch with that album because it came out at just such a terrible time. And so that was really depressing. And I kind of had to find something to distract myself. So I got more into the recording world. Like I said, I got a nice mic. I learned about plugins. I discovered Spitfire Audio, which make incredible orchestral plugins, among other things. They have a free series called Labs, which was my introduction to them. Incredible sounds, completely free, super easy to use. So I basically became obsessed with Spitfire, and I was like, I have to work for them no matter what. And so I managed to get like a 3-month internship with them, just working on their plugin support line. And then they offered me like a full-time gig after that ended. So I just kept on working with them for about a year and a half. And then by the end of that year and a half, I was just so burned out from being on my computer all day. And I was like, you know what? I think I need to just find something like this that's like real world. And I was starting to get into hardware synths at the time, just on the side, and then getting more into like recording gear. And so then I was like, what if I like built hardware? Like I'd soldered once before. I made like a really terrible like tremolo pedal that barely worked, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like I literally kept adding solder to it until it worked. I don't know. I was like really lucky. I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, but that was like years before. And so then I was unemployed and like kind of depressed and going to every synth and hardware like festival event that I could find. And there's a lot in LA. Luckily it was like, midway through the pandemic. So things were opening up again. You could still go to events. So then I managed to get a job building Neve mixing consoles in LA for like the coolest artists, and they hired me for my enthusiasm. And then they taught me to solder, and so then I just built hundreds and hundreds of channel boards, and that was like the best crash course in learning how to build like really complex boards. And so I did that for like 6 months, and I got to go to the coolest studios in LA, and I got to help repair some vintage SSLs and learn a lot about the troubleshooting process. I got to learn how to recap things. So it was like honestly like the best job. Like it paid like next to nothing, but it was the learning that I got from it made it like so worth it. But I wasn't really making ends meet in LA because it was so expensive. And so then I started building pedals on the side because I suddenly had all this knowledge about how to, even assemble boards. And I found that pedals were so small and satisfying compared to these gigantic channel boards that I was building every day. And so then I was like, well, maybe I'm more interested in effects actually. Like recording like hardware is so cool and I still respect it so much, but I'm the kind of person that like I really just trust my ears. And so you could tell me something like cost $400,000 and it will be the best thing you ever hear, but I might prefer the $30 mic, from Target, like the Target Kids section. Like, what's the vibe? I don't know. Like, I respect all gear. So I did feel a little bit isolated in the pro audio world, and I just had all these creative, colorful ideas. I love fashion. I love textiles. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to be making things that I want to see in the world. So then I moved home to Portland to save money to recover from 4 years in LA, barely making it, through the pandemic and everything. And I just started making these weird pedals that I just had visions of. And yeah, so it kind of just like naturally progressed from software into hardware, learned kind of the basics of pro audio, and then was able to kind of move in a completely different direction and follow the inspiration.
That's incredible. That's such a cool story. Got to edit in some like really nice kind of like violins while you're telling the story. It's like such a journey.
Yeah, that was really long, but I think that's all there was. Like it just kind of happened.
That's so great. And I love like how it was such like a natural progression. I'd love if we could dive into kind of maybe the inspiration of some of the pedals you've built, like what gave you the idea for the aesthetic and kind of what you've done technically.
Absolutely. I brought a couple of my pedals over just to use as like this is the first prototype I did of like kind of this vision I had. I don't know if you can tell because my camera quality sucks, but it's a very physically fuzzy fuzz face pedal. And this was just a kit that I bought, or the pedal itself was a kit for like the fuzz face like clone, which I actually, I'm not gonna lie, I hate the sound of that circuit. It is not my favorite fuzz face, but I love the aesthetic of the original fuzz face, that circular pedal with its little face, its little knob eyes. I just think it's just such a cool, visually striking, very inspiring pedal. So I did my own spin on that. It's a fuzzy fuzz pedal. That was kind of the play on words there, bringing in that very tactile experience. I was kind of hooked from there. I didn't love, like, I used a process called wet felting. My first job, oddly enough, was in fiber art. I used to design patterns for like crochet projects. I taught needle felting, wet felting, sewing, all kinds of things when I was like 16. This was kind of before I got really into music. So I had all this like knowledge about textiles and fiber that was just kind of sitting in my brain for like a decade or more. I got really into that at such a young age. It was such a fun creative outlet. Anyway, and so then I started kind of applying those techniques to what I was learning in the audio world. And it was just like, the more I combined those two loves, the more inspired and excited I got. And so then I just kind of, I'm just still honestly experimenting. Like I'm just trying new things. So the next batch I did, or actually I can't remember, I think I probably did a bunch of pedals in between, but the first drop of pedals I did kind of as KinKin Audio was this like red and pink color scheme of beautiful fabrics that I found at one of my favorite fabric stores in Portland. And I picked sounds that I thought would be like a cool like pedal board or like a range, or basically just pedals that I would want, which is a terrible business model because then you have a really hard time getting rid of them. Like you just want to keep them all, which still happens. I've just built like 10 of these gummy bear chorus pedals, and I want to keep every single one because I'm attached to them. They're like my children. And I just love them. And for some reason, seeing that many of them together, I'm like, I just want to keep them. It's a problem. I will get rid of them.
Just one big pedal board of just the gummy bear pedals, all like daisy chained.
Oh my God, the dream. Anyway, so yeah, it's again, this process of following my inspiration and just really just experimenting. And I think that's probably going to be the model for the next while, because I'm still like, there is so much that I want to try. I have so many ideas that I just need like time to just try them all. I'm starting to do a bit more repetition because like I only did like 3 gummy bear petals, one for myself, obviously. And then the other 2 went so quick, and then there were still so many people that wanted them. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just build like a bunch of those, and then I'll do another drop of like a couple different effects. And I'm working all from clones right now, clone circuits. I would love to start designing my own, but it's just a matter of time. And I'm also kind of working my way up towards that. Like I am self-taught. I am teaching myself everything as I go, as much as I want to just like, invest all my time in learning how to develop circuits. It kind of makes more sense to keep building other circuits and really understand how they work. I'm a very kinesthetic learner, hence KinKin audio, kinesthetic kinship. And this is like the best way I've found to teach myself is to simply begin and just like dive in head first, deep end. Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm just such a huge fan of what you do. And I forgot how I came across your page, but I was immediately like, this is incredible. I'm such a fangirl, guys. It's like unreal.
Thank you. That actually means a lot, because I really am trying to view this as like, well, the original goal was there was like a lot of original goals. There still are a lot of like long-term goals, and I'm trying to figure out like what makes sense to focus on in every given moment. So right now I have like 3 super cool collaborations in the works that I would love to talk about, but I'm like, it's a little too soon. I'd like the things to kind of be made and like solidified. But at the same time, like I'm having to put pretty much all my other plans on hold while I kind of invest all my time in these really cool collaborations, which it's funny, collaborations were definitely one of the priorities that I wanted in terms of like having a pedal business. I'm like, I want to collab with fabric designers, with musicians, with any kind of designer, any kind of visual artist, any kind of sound artist. And whatever that collaboration becomes is like its own unique thing. So it's not like I'm not always going to be providing the visual element. Maybe I provide the sound part of it, or somebody else provides the sound input, and then I, do the visual side. Like I'm open to all kinds of collaborations. And pretty much from day one, people were like hitting me up to collaborate. And I was like, yes, perfect. And so at the very start, I was like, I'll kind of treat this like I'm an artist, like a fine artist, doing like a batch of paintings, right? And having like a gallery exhibit where you just have like 4 paintings for sale. And once those are gone, you move on to the next series. And that way it's always fresh. I think I get bored quite quickly. And I love the idea of just having these like very, very, very small batch, or even just single petals that kind of just exist as these little nuggets of inspiration. I'm a very visual person, in case you couldn't tell. And I love this idea of having like a pedal board of just completely unique, weird, colorful textural sound devices. Like that to me is like the ultimate dream. And I'm so glad that people like you are really like you're seeing the vision, you're resonating with the vision. It gives me so much inspiration to keep going, keep pursuing these weird visions that I have, because I think they're hitting sometimes, or they have the potential to hit.
They do. And like I immediately was just drawn to like not only the aesthetic and the visuals, and they sound great from the videos I've listened to, and that end is amazing, but it's also like the honesty and like, this is who you are and this is what you do. And I just really like, it really resonated with me.
I try and be honest in everything I do, because I find maybe this is the professional songwriter training. Honesty is what sells. And that sounds so like consumerist and horrible, but like in terms of like connection, okay, selling can be money, but it can also be like, that's what sells a connection. That's what people connect to, is honesty in all forms. So
how has it been like, kind of learning curve wise, just popping a business off from nothing?
Honestly, I don't even know. Like I'm so in it that I can't even see like what's happening, or it's like every moment I've had to adopt this mental space of like, be ready to pivot, be ready to learn at every second. I think I've had to kind of verbally tell myself a couple of times, like, you feel scared right now, you feel fear, feel that feeling, but don't let it stop you. If you're afraid of getting stuck, go ahead and go towards getting stuck. And once you get stuck, there are tools to get unstuck. I feel like I'm learning at all times, and just really trying to be okay with that. I mean, I am okay with that. I love learning. I live to learn. Live, laugh, learn.
Yeah. That's such a good approach. Like that's
Thank
such
you, yeah.
Like I love that approach because it leaves space for growth.
Absolutely. And if my brand could send any message, it would be, I don't know anything, or like I'm okay with not knowing anything, but I am so ready to learn. Like teach me anything about anything. I'm like ready for it. I think in the audio industry, especially, in my experience, I've noticed that in any given room of like audiophiles, of people that are into pro audio, or even just like bedroom producers, there's this like unspoken, I don't know what it is, like a trait where it's like you have to sound like you know everything. Like you have to know the name of every console ever used on every record you've ever listened to. You have to know like how the effects work before you build them. Or like it's like this unspoken thing, like if you don't know that, like, are you really legit? Like, are you actually a musician? Or do you know? And I hate that. Like, I would like to dispel that. If I could do anything, if I could change this industry in one way, it would be to have everybody at all times say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how that circuit works, but all be willing to learn together and just support each other and be like, oh, well, I actually know how it works, so I can help. Like, I can explain to you. Do you have any questions? Like, you know, just like an inviting atmosphere. I'd love the industry to look more like that.
Like, I so resonate to what you said about like there's like the vibe in the air of having to sound like you know things, and like, I don't know, like that kind of like slight dishonesty, like that dissonance in the room. So I really appreciate that that's what you're doing. And again, it just opens up the energy for expansion and not just like this uptight, everyone's kind of pretending to.
Yes, it's the pretending for me. I'm like, nobody actually knows everything. Like, I've worked for some of the smartest people in the world and they don't know everything. And I'm like, that's great. It's great to not know everything because it means there's just always more to be learning and understanding. And that means there's always room for innovation. And like, making things, not exactly understanding it, and then doing it slightly differently, and then that leads to something that nobody's ever seen before. You know, like, that's so cool, and we should be celebrating that more.
100% agree with you. And kind of on the note of your pedals, like for the effects themselves that you chose, like let's say I listen to your analog chorus or the spring reverb, like is there a certain sound that you're drawn to that you kind of want the KinKin audio to have, like a certain aesthetic, vintagey, more modern?
I would say, based on my philosophy of like, I love all sound. I love all gear that can make sound or treat sound. I'm never going to pigeonhole myself into like only analog circuits, only digital. I would love to get into digital signal processing. I'm obsessed with like Red Panda, Chase Bliss. I absolutely love what they're doing. I have none of the skills to make pedals like that yet, but I can keep working towards that. And then I would never want to be branded as someone who just makes pedals that are DSP. And so I would say at this point, no, like based on how I have selected all of the pedals that all the circuits that I've made have been kind of based on several things. One, I like to kind of learn the origin of a certain effect. So I'm not sure how to describe this. I kind of view it in my head as a family tree of effects pedals. So I've been learning that pretty much any pedal that exists kind of is a spin off of another pedal. And if you kind of dig, keep digging, you find that was based on another pedal, which was based on an amp circuit from the 70s, So like this chorus, the Gummy Bear chorus, is based on the Boss CE2, and that is based on the jazz chorus amp from Roland, which was like the first chorus circuit that kind of hit the market back in the 70s. Boss made the pedal version of it, which then spun off, a million other chorus pedals, but it's kind of known as like just that classic chorus sound. And I love that. Like, I'm so inspired by that, the history of it and the actual sound of it. But then I've never really found a sound that I didn't like either. So like, I don't know. Like, I just am so inspired by anything that modulates sound, anything that passes a signal, and what flavor it imparts, even if it's unnoticeable. Like, I just get so jazzed every time I just plug a guitar into even like a really terrible amp. Like, my amp is not the cheapest Fender, but I thought it was the cheapest Fender amp you could buy. There's actually one that's like the level below it, which doesn't have any effects. This one has like a couple effects built in. I am obsessed with this amp. It was like, I bought it back in 2014. It was my first amp, and I've been slowly making it over the years because it was just black Tolex and really depressing. Not my vibe at all. I try and avoid all black, white, neutral, things like that in my music gear. I just full saturation for me, color everywhere. Even if it doesn't work together, I'd rather like full color that is like a horrible cacophony of senses than just like all black, which I know like a lot of people will be very angry at that, because I think the sleek black look has its place and a lot of people are very inspired by it, but I'm not one of those people. So I've been slowly making over this amp, and the more I make it over, the more I love the sound of it. It's so bizarre how the visual really impacts the sound for me, because I haven't changed anything about the circuit. It's still all the same exact components, the same speaker. I did change the knobs, but that doesn't change the sound. And I just love it even more now. Give me all the terrible gear and give me all the good gear. Just give me all the gear.
All the gear, but it's all about the vibes. At the
It's
end
all
of the day.
vibes. Yeah. And also, like, okay, I have this philosophy that applies to songs, but I think I'm going to apply it to everything. So I have this theory, or this, I don't know, philosophy, that every song ever written is the best song ever written, as long as you hear it and experience it in the right, like, emotional state. Maybe it's a physical place, maybe it's a time in your life, maybe, like, there are so many factors. Like, I couldn't even list all the factors that are involved, but as long as those factors all align and you hear whatever the song is, any song, it can be the best song for that moment. And so I apply that same thing to gear, because maybe it's because of my experience writing for, like, visual media, where you are really trying to evoke emotions from sound, that sometimes having the cleanest, brightest, like, most perfect, like, signal for your guitar isn't the vibe. Like, what if you want nostalgia? What if you make the sound more broken up, or, like, tinnier or ugly, or, like, whatever, some, like, an audiophile would be like, oh, that's, like, okay, I have this really terrible Orange Velvet record player. It's like Bluetooth. It's not audiophile quality. People will probably hate me for even owning it, but I love it, because it's like you can listen to something from your iPhone, or you can listen to an actual record on it, and it's just this terrible, like, super thin, like, very tinny quality, and I love it. I don't know why. It just really, it reminds me of something. It could be very nostalgic. So applying that to music gear, it means that, like, I really respect just even the shittiest quality and also the best quality. It's just all about the time and the place and the feeling. And yeah, thanks for listening.
No, I love that outlook, and I'm so gonna apply that to the productions that I do. Like, this is the best for this moment, for this mood, for this time.
Yes.
And like really setting that intention. That's so important. And I really appreciate that message. And guys, you should listen to Sarah. So to kind of sum up everything we spoke about, since this show is centered around starting out and whatnot, I always love to ask our amazing guests to drop either a piece of advice or something they want to say to the amazing Studio Animal viewers. So do you got something to say to the peoples?
I do. Just like deciding which, I think in this moment, what I would like to be told, like maybe before I started this, if you have a dream of something even that feels like so far from your reach, like, you can make it happen. And the only thing holding you back is fear. I think at this point, the internet is so vast and there is so much information that just simply going down Googling rabbit holes can lead you to information that you couldn't have even dreamed of. And then that is enough to empower you to make that dream happen. I really did not think I could ever have my own audio company. And for some reason, I have one now. I'm not really sure how that happened. And it is the coolest thing. Like, it has been so much fun. And I would say it is terrifying pretty much every single day. But I would not trade that for the world. Like, the terror doesn't outweigh the pleasure and the inspiration and the joy of doing something that I dreamed of it for a very long time, ever since I started working for other people that had audio businesses. So yeah, don't let fear hold you back. That's what I would say.
I gotta clap to that one. I think that this episode has definitely been like one of the most inspirational, because it's really not every day that you're also the first person I've had on the show that's really like the founder of their own company, that's like in the gear space and not necessarily in mixing or production. So it's like a really unique thing, and I love how fresh and inspiring your outlook is. So I really think that this episode is going to inspire. I'm very inspired.
Yay, thank you. That means the world.
And I'm really pumped to see what you do next. I'm a super fan.
I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah, guys, and I'm going to link all of the KinKin audio links below. Check them out. Have a listen. They look amazing. They sound great. And now you know kind of like the outlook and mindset behind it, which just makes it even more amazing.
Yay!
I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast. Thank you so much
for
your time.
Thank you for having me. This was such a great reality check, or like kind of a check-in to actually like, what am I doing? Because I'm so busy every day just like making stuff that I don't ever stop to think like, wow, like, am I actually doing something? Like, is this real? I think it is real. It's not just a dream. Like, it's happening. So thank you. Thank you for having me.